What's up, everybody? This is Alex Worldwide Keller, and you're listening to The Card is Going to Change. And let me tell you about one of our beautiful, amazing, gracious, and awesome sponsors. That's right, it's Pollyanna DIY at Pollyanna DIY on Twitter, on Instagram. Go to PollyannaDIY.com, and you can get all sorts of amazing buttons, shirts, pins, the whole kit and caboodle. That's right, PollyannaDIY.com. But now, let's take it to the reason that you hit download, the reason that you are streaming. That's right, the card is going to change.
Hello once again, everybody. Thanks for listening to AIW's The Card is Going to Change. Before we get into this week's episode, as always, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors that help us bring the show to you for free each and every week. Firstly, thanks to Angelo's Pizza. They're feeding us here as they always do while we record, and they, of course, bring pizza to you at our live events at Mount Carmel. If you want to try more of their pizza or anything else on their menu, it's all delicious. Head to Angelo's on Madison Avenue in Lakewood, Ohio. And thanks to Smart Mark Video, they record all of our live events. And if you want to relive any of those or watch them for the first time, you can purchase that on DVD or digital download from smartmarkvideo.com. And additionally, head to powerbomb.tv, sign up using the code ABSOLUTE, and you will get a 20-day trial for free. And then stick around and just keep watching the shows that we put out there from the AIW archives. And as always, thanks to Jack Prince, who helps take care of all of our printing and graphic design needs. They can do all of that and more for you, whether it be banners, t-shirts, business cards, flyers, everything and anything. For all that they have to offer, head to jackprince.com.
JAKPrince.com.
Yes, that voice you heard right there, none other than AIW owner John Thorne. My name is Steve Guy. I am your moderator of sorts, and strap in. This is another business episode, I guess, right?
We'll see. Well, we'll see how it turns out. I don't know. We're going in this one kind of cold.
Yeah, but this is one of those ones that we felt we owed you guys as our fans because you're important to us, and we know that there are all sorts of questions that have arisen from the tweets and posts that we put out with regards to a venue change. So that's what we're going to get into on this episode and try to explain it to you guys as best as possible, maybe without letting you know all of the details, because we don't necessarily know all of the details. And, there's some stuff we just got to keep close to the vest.
I'm hoping that by the time this comes out, we will have already solved this problem. But as of right now, there is still no venue when we record this. I'm hoping that by chance, in between when this is released, everything is worked out. That's my hope right now.
So we're going into Hell on Earth this weekend, and this will be our last show at Mount Carmel. And I think that's where we start. As many of you know, we kind of had some concerns, and there were some issues that came up, and this impacted our beer sales with Mount Carmel. So this will already be another show, just so you know. We won't have beer there. Please don't bring any alcohol in. We just don't want any more issues. We want to pack the place. We want to have a great time. We don't want to have any issues here to end our time at Mount Carmel because, for the most part, they've been great to us. But walk us through what happened here, John, because really we had it scheduled out through 2019.
Right. So, I would say probably a month, 2 months ago, I was offered potentially some international talent in March. So, it was like going to be like, you need this specific date for this to even be possible. And I was like, well, I better just sit down. I remember it was a Saturday morning. I was like, I better just sit down and I better just take a look at a calendar and start mapping stuff out. So, I try to go through other schedules and talk to different people. And I come up with like a pretty loose schedule of, starting in March. And, I figured out March, April, May, July, September, November and December, and then I left some gaps in there. You know what I mean, for some versatility. And I called Mount Carmel, and I went through all the dates, and they wrote them down, and they said all good and everything's good. So then you start booking people. You start first with the guys you're going with, the champions and things like that, and you say, hey, here are the dates, and you give them to a couple other people, and you start kind of figuring out your schedule and, guys you're going to try to utilize on every event. And, I did all that, and I booked people. I started trying to map out special guests and things like that.
Right.
But on top of that, we still had December 28th. That was booked probably a year ago. You know what I mean?
Right.
At Mount Carmel. So this was, going on. And when I confirmed the new dates, and I was like, also, November 23rd, 28th still, those are still good. Everything was confirmed. And then, you just start moving forward with the process of, getting things coordinated and trying to get organized, and, also trying to map it around the WrestleMania weekend show. And I would say at this point, it's probably by the time you're listening to this, it's probably a month ago. I get a call from Pedro, and if anyone knows me, it's no phone calls. Right. Ever. It's all text communication. I don't think I've ever talked to Pedro on the phone in my life, to be perfectly honest with you. And Pedro calls me, and I go, "This is weird. Maybe it's a pocket dial." Or we were going over things for the con.
Yeah, for the Akron. Yeah.
And he was trying to potentially get some sponsors involved. So I was like, oh, maybe he's just calling to get a detail on something, or run something by me that he can't type out. He's like, I had to call you, man. I said, for what? And he was just kind of like, well, you should probably be sitting down for this. And I was like, oh, what the fuck is going on here? And he's like, I don't know why they called me, but I just got a call from Mount Carmel, and the guy that we have been dealing with for the last 4 years, no idea what happened to him, but he's out. He is not involved anymore. And they explain that to Pedro. It's whoever the new guy is in charge, and he says, November 23rd will be your final event at this facility. We do not want to be associated with pro wrestling going forward. The parents at the school don't want you involved. The members of the church don't want you here. I don't want you here. We don't want you here. And this is not up for discussion. And, Pedro said, Pedro tried to reason with them and say, hey, we've been paying you guys quite a bit of money for 4 straight years. Is it a money thing? Like, what can we do? And they said, we don't care about money. We don't want your money. We don't want you here. And Pedro said the guy was very matter of fact about it. Didn't say that there was any specific instance that caused this. It's just kind of like he's the new guy and he doesn't want it.
Right.
I don't know what there was always a little bit of pushback from Mount Carmel on certain things. And maybe this guy just, didn't care and just was like, that's it, let's just cut it out.
It could have been that the former Padre was just appreciating that cash coming in monthly, and that was adding to things and helping them. So he just kind of ignored the pushback. I mean, he would obviously come to us from time to time and say, "Hey, none of this or no more of that or whatever." But
and we always accommodated all of their requests, absolutely. Which is what is frustrating is, it was a lot of things, kind of, like it's, you know, don't tag our facility on Instagram.
Right.
Like, it's like we were like the dirty little secret there or whatever.
Yeah, we didn't really ruin anything of theirs physically. We took good care of it. We
Clean the place up.
cleaned the place up. I mean, a lot of people probably don't know this, but obviously when you leave our shows at Mount Carmel, the students and even guys that were on the show, people are there cleaning until sometimes 3 a.m.
Yeah, it's
and
like
making sure that it's spotless before we head out of there.
I don't think that's a thing that people realize. Like when you rent a facility, it's not like, you know, a turnkey operation. Like you're going to the Quicken Loans Arena or something.
Right, yeah.
Like you rent it, you set it up, you tear it down, you clean it. So, you know, like we had to do all that. So all those times where people wanted to bring fans, bring the weapons and all that stuff, there was there were students there all night long sweeping all that up, or sweeping up the, you know, the cups of beer, or, you know,
every little bit of beer or soda that you've ever spilled got mopped up by the end of the night by somebody.
Right.
And we were even accommodating for when they had wedding receptions and things going in the basement, where our locker room area was. We would only use certain sections of it so that people can set up for it, even though we had the facility for that day.
Right.
You know, it's like those people kind of impeding on ours, but it is what it is. You know, we were as accommodating and helpful as possible with this partnership. That being said, I mean, sure, you can understand, right, how pro wrestling does not fit in with a church.
I mean,
I get it, but
I mean, possibly, but the fact is they were willing to rent to it. We weren't the first wrestling organization that ever was there.
right. And to say, hey, all the stuff that you have booked.
Right. And it's, you know, they have, you know, we paid them consistently.
Right.
You know, we've spent thousands and thousands of dollars there over the last 4 years, which, you know, contributed to their parish, I'm sure, and different things. But to not even honor at least to the end of the year, you know what I mean? Like,
and keep in mind, these last 2 shows are when school's not in session.
Right.
So we're not really interfering with anything because they're not. I don't think that they run like a winter athletics program that goes during the holidays or whatever. I think that they're just off, if I remember from everything from the past. So it would have been very easy, and then we're off until March for them to at least say, yeah, here you guys have till the end of the year.
At least with the days there, you know, the dates there, we were going to be off until March. So it was going to be a nice gap to where if we could have got through December, maybe it would have been a lot easier to fix this problem. But, you know, here we are a month that now we've been working on this, and the problem is still not fixed. I mean, we have still not found a venue, and I've seen people saying like, oh, you're not trying hard enough or this and that. And you don't understand what a hard sell it is to get wrestling into a facility. A. B, to find one that is big enough or
that's what I was just going to say.
Affordable enough.
Talk about before we get into the history of pro wrestling at places, one of the things very firstly to overcome are the logistic issues that we need.
Right.
In terms of timing, you know, during the course
we
of
need
the
a
day.
specific date, you know, in December. We need December 28th, very specific date. We need a place that can accommodate, you know, as many people as we're going to bring.
Right.
You know, could we go to Music Links? Probably, but is our fan base going to want to drive to Music Links every month? No, I know that.
Right.
You know, I know that's a hard sell. You know,
it's a hard sell for us once every few months.
It's an easy solution for me, but to just have a show, but it's a hard sell, and it's puts way too much expectation on our fan base to make that travel, because I know that our fan base is really like Cleveland, West Side Cleveland for the most part. You know, there are people that travel in, you know, don't get me wrong, but the big core of our fan base is West Side Cleveland.
Right.
So, you know, we're trying to stay reasonably within this location. And, you know, Music Links is an hour, you know, it's an hour out. It's in the snow belt. Weather is an issue out there.
Yeah, especially December. Yep.
Seating is an issue. Capacity is an issue. There's no locker room in the wintertime. So there's a lot of issues there. And then, you have to find a building that is accepting of wrestling. There are plenty of places because of things over the last 20 years or whatever that are perfect for wrestling that will not even entertain the idea because they have done it in the past with somebody else. I've contacted buildings that I knew have not had wrestling in legitimately 20 years. And I've gotten responses, we've tried this before and it's not for us, and this is a 20-year gap of when they've tried it. But, a lot of these buildings are run by the same people. Old people that didn't want it there to begin with.
Yeah.
And as much as people think wrestling is in this crazy boom period, if you're not like young and in tune with that, and you're one of these old people that owns one of these buildings, you have a preconceived notion of what wrestling is and you don't want it for the most part.
Right. So as we search for buildings, and I know everybody wants to help, and people have asked all of us, I think, a tremendous amount of questions about it and thrown out ideas. I know I've been fielding questions, and people have thrown out their ideas of what they think could work. I mean, the things to keep in mind of what we had going with Mount Carmel, something's got to be within a decent budget. We're not going to be able to rent a building for $1,200+ That's just not necessarily realistic.
Well, right, and see, that is on the low end. Like, I'll give an example of a building that did say that they wanted us, and I won't say what it is, but it's a nice facility, suburban West Side Cleveland, good size. They wanted $1,800 plus $1 for every chair that we wanted to use, plus $8 for every table we wanted to use to set up our merchandise. That's kind of the astronomical amounts of money some of these buildings are requesting, and that is not, we can't just do a show and lose a ton of money either. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many different factors that are going into this. Pricing is one. Do they have chairs is one. Can we sell concessions is one, because that's a revenue stream. If we can't, is there these other things? Some of these places want you to hire a police officer at $40 an hour, which on top of the rental fee, on top of maybe you have to rent shares as well. So there's a lot of different things going on, and then I've talked to the Odeon, okay, and the Odeon is somewhat accepting of it, but then you have to worry about the parking down there. Are fans gonna want to Uber or pay to park, or there's I'm doing like pros and cons. Like, there's a few buildings that are like on the yeah maybe, but they all come with pros and they all come with a lot of cons. And Mount Carmel, honestly, probably spoiled us for the last 4 years because it was such a turnkey operation of it had bleachers, it had chairs, it was big, it had a nice locker room. It was affordable for us. For the most part, it was very accommodating to what we needed until recently. So it's really hard to find, to find a building. And then a lot of these places will not even call or email you back. They just don't even want to acknowledge it.
And you named two things there too that I think people sometimes forget. It was big enough. Some of it's the ceiling height. You got to remember, guys are going to be on the top ropes. This ring is going to be tall. So, and then you're going to have. How tall? How from ground to the top rope? What would you say that is?
I think it's like 8 feet.
8 feet,
but
and
then you
have
put
a
a
6 foot tall man or taller on top of that, right? So you need to have a high ceiling,
like 15, 20 foot high ceilings. Yeah.
So we need that out of venues, and then locker room is another thing that we're running into. We've talked to a couple different facilities, and they don't have a locker room. So could we drape one off and create one? Yes, but the facility needs to be big enough for us to do that and then hold people. I've had multiple people give me ideas. And they say, well, that holds about 200 to 300 people.
Right. But then you got to put a ring.
But then you got to
in
put
there.
a ring in the middle of that.
And then you got to make a locker room. You know what I mean?
And so that's where the difficulties lie.
And that's to go back to the Odeon thing, that would be limited capacity. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to find a place like Mount Carmel was a pretty wide open spot, big bleachers. You could really jam a lot of people in there. So we're trying to find a place that has the space that, even like maybe we don't need all the space, but I'd rather have a place that had the space if we needed it than need the space and not have it. So that's an issue. And, then, you're running into these places where the people that book the hall are on vacation for 3 weeks and you can't get any sort of answer.
Sure.
And then, there's security deposits and all kinds of, all kinds of different things to where, maybe this is wrong, but we had a handshake agreement with Mount Carmel for the most part. We signed something like the first date,
right.
And then from then on, it was just kind of like a handshake thing. And then I also want to address something else. Is like somebody was like, well, maybe we should call Mount Carmel and talk to them. They don't want to hear it. They've made their decision, and it's only probably going to make things worse when it comes to the show this weekend.
Yeah, and realistically, from a business standpoint, folks, you have to keep in mind, as much as we love you, you're not giving your money directly to Mount Carmel necessarily. Yes, we're using a portion of your money to rent out the space, but you're not a parishioner. You're not in there every single Sunday giving their money.
Right.
You're not sending your kids to their school. I mean, if some of you are, and maybe you want to say, hey, you'd like to have us there, whatever. But this is not like we'll give Mount Carmel a bad Yelp review kind of thing.
Yeah, because they have their people. We're just an additional income for them. Like, they could obviously they could take us or leave us. Because we're not parents that are paying a private tuition for our kids to go to their private school.
And you got to remember, the churches are a community all their own. So the last thing that we need in this situation and scenario is, if we were to find another church, is for Mount Carmel to find out and say, hey, you shouldn't have these guys here, blah, 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 because our fans got a little too aggressive.
Yeah, so, it just kind of is what it is, and I went back and forth, and I was like, maybe should I just call and try to talk to this new guy? But, Pedro said this guy, he was very firm, and who knows, maybe it's a different tone after we do one under his watch, and maybe he says, hey, not as bad as we thought, or whatever. Maybe we can revisit. I'm trying to, as much as possible, keep the door open for the future, but as of now, it is closed. Whether it is locked and the keys thrown away is to be determined.
So, do you want to divulge some of the places that are kind of on the map, on the radar for us right now?
I mean,
or maybe, I guess we can do both. Some places that are on the radar for us, and maybe we can throw out some places that people have suggested, and we're like, hey, this isn't going to work. Just so as people are helping us, we're not.
Well, I mean, I've gotten a ton of Come to the Packard Music Hall in the Youngstown area, and we could never fill that place. That's, NXT couldn't even fill that place, and it's a big, huge building that is probably super expensive to rent. Like, that's a thing. That's another thing. A lot of these real concert venues are really, really expensive,
right?
Especially in the Cleveland area, when they're owned and operated by these big corporations like AEG or Live Nation. We aren't their business, and their business is music, and that's how that's what they want in those facilities. And if you're going to take one of those dates from them, especially on a Friday night, it's gonna be very costly. Maybe you could catch like a cheaper rental if we ran shows on like a Wednesday or something. You know what I mean? But that's just not realistic. I know weeknight shows have happened, but that goes back to the expectation of the fan base. Is we're trying to be as accommodating to as many people as possible.
Yeah, we got fans that travel in from out of town.
Right. So even Fridays are tough. You know what I mean? But a Wednesday would be even tougher.
Right.
So, we're trying to keep, it's hard, honestly. It's frustrating because when Turner's Hall closed down, Biggins and I went through this as well. And you get a lot of just doors shut in your face for this. And even when we went to Mount Carmel, it was on a one-show probationary period because they had a bad experience with another wrestling group there before. And we had to really kind of finesse them into giving us a chance. And when we went to Mount Carmel, it was going to be a one-shot deal, because it was exactly the same exact situation. When Turner's Hall closed, the last show there was Hell on Earth.
Okay.
And then it closed down, and we had to find a new place in a matter of weeks for our December event. So it's weird how it is almost the same exact situation, and it's hard, man. It's hard, and some of these. Another thing that a newer issue than from then is the revitalization of Cleveland as a whole, and a lot of things have been bought and they're being redeveloped and torn down, and when you hear redevelopment, that means big money,
more money, yeah.
And that is what's making it difficult, because I don't want to have to be one of those wrestling companies that wants to charge $60 to $100 a ticket, because that's just, you can't do that in Cleveland based on the economy. And like, I keep going back to the expectation of the fan base. Like, I could never expect them to support that. So I'm trying to find something that isn't going to be just an astronomical increase in our bills.
Sure. And again, geographically, like he made the point of Youngstown, we're trying to stay within the radius because that's where most of our fan base is. Do we have fan bases in other places? Yeah, but the short end of the story is not as large.
Right. And, would we like to go to Youngstown? Yeah, but not full time.
Yeah.
Like, we need a home base in this area, because this is where we've been. You can't just pick up and move and just say, hey, this is our new home base. And then, now let's circle back to, okay, things are going good in Akron, right? We've done 2 in Akron, very successful for the most part. Well, all of our dates are booked on Fridays. The Akron building does not allow rentals on Fridays because they do a fish fry every single Friday of the year.
Well, and part of the success in Akron thus far, don't you think, has been because we're not there every single time.
Right. No, absolutely. But I'm just saying, push comes to shove, maybe we move December to Akron.
Sure.
We couldn't do that because it's on a Friday. And they will not rent that building at all on a Friday because of the fish fries.
So what are some of the venues, like I was saying, that we have been able to look into and maybe have not worked thus far, just so people know kind of where we are? Do you want to throw those out, or if they ask us, and we tried it?
If it says venue for rent in Cleveland, Ohio, we have contacted it.
If you can Google the word venue in Cleveland, Ohio, we've
contacted them all. We've any sort of like searchable term, gymnasium for rent, we've hit up boys and girls clubs, YMCAs, rec centers. I had a very nice meeting with a rec center 3 weeks ago, and I thought, here we go, it's a done deal.
Yeah.
And then they said, we can't accommodate this date because we have so many community activities going on that week because kids are off school for Christmas and parents need to take their kids somewhere. So we have all these, it's a community center. That is what it is for. So, they can't say, hey, get out of here, kids. We have a wrestling, show coming in here. It's the setup all day.
Right. I just talked to a church recently this week that was ideal for us as well.
Identical to Mount Carmel.
Yeah. But in fact, they just created a deal where they also house events and classes for 2 different charter schools or something. So they're transitioning, and the Padre there told me we don't have anything until March because they've got so many different holiday plays and shows plus athletics,
sports, and
he said they're booked every single weekend until March. So we ran into that again.
And another thing, now I'm learning about all these different worlds through this. Like, I know nothing about privatized sports. I think kids sports, I think high school,
Right.
But now there's this whole other world of privatized sports
Yeah.
and these like big club teams, where there are these facilities that are 100% dedicated to these club teams, and it's big money to pay to be, to have the space in these places, and they're booked. Some of these facilities that you would not even know existed. Like I went to one this week. It does not even have a sign on it, and you would not even know it's there. And the guy said that they are booked literally every single day through September 1st. And
Next year,
yeah. And he's like, I don't have a sign because it's like, why even spend the money to put a sign up? Because I'm already booked. I can't accommodate anything more coming in here. And, he was very open, to working out things. And, he's seeing if he can move something around for us. I'm really hoping that I get a message while we're recording this that's like, hey, this is going to happen, at this place, at least for December. Because right now, we've kind of scaled back on even our negotiating with these buildings to where it's like, we just want December 28th right now.
We can figure out the rest later.
And we'll fill in the blanks later because... like the rec center I met with, they were just like trying to go over all the dates. And I was like, don't worry about all the dates. Just focus on this one. Yeah. And then, they focus on that one and they're like, we can't do it. And, it's very, these places have schedules, through this privatized sports and community things. And, even these churches with the charter schools, it's hard, it's hard. And then a lot of these venues, they also will just sit back and wait for a big wedding payday.
Right.
Right. why am I gonna rent you our facility for $1,000 when we'll just wait it out and we'll get one big wedding come in here for $10,000.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. People think sports and schools and all these other things we're up against. It's so much that we're up against. It's not any one thing. And who the heck think that you put wrestling and wedding in the same grouping? But when it comes to an event space, we are outside of
we're trying
Hyde and Dick Justice, of course.
We're trying to think outside the box and go to all these places with space.
Yeah,
and it's just been a very stressful and frustrating experience. There are a couple that are like on the hook. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm saying like worst case scenario, we're probably going to wind up at the Odeon, but at least for something either in December or 2019. I don't know about a full-time spot, but we're probably going to have to try one there. Basically, the thought process now is we have a couple that aren't saying no, but they're not saying yes, but they're intrigued. Mm-hmm. So it's going to probably be bouncing around until we can figure things out. And we've also looked into leasing our own place.
I was just going to say, one of the things that's tossed out within our group and people have asked about is, what about AIW having their own place?
And that is a whole other can of worms, you know what I mean? And that is a whole other, huge expense because, now you're looking at thousands of dollars a month that you got to come up with.
Right.
And you got to, you have to purchase everything that's needed for it. You have to make the chair purchases and the table purchases and, you got to get lights and you got to pay the utility bills and there's all sorts of different things that come with that. That is a world that I don't know very much about. I know how to rent a house or rent an apartment, you know what I mean? But when you're getting into renting commercial space, there's a lot more questions that the owner will ask you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but we're not ruling that out, but we have to rule that out for the short term right now because
there's no way we're going to have it by December 28th.
Right. You can't, and who knows if we're even, this is even going to be a thing that happens, you know what I mean? But we're not ruling out any sort of possibility at this point because, it's getting, it's getting more difficult as the days go on.
Yeah, so I guess as we wind this thing down, we've given you guys as much information as possible. This Friday, Hell on Earth is going to be our last show at Mount Carmel for the foreseeable future, unless they change their mind at some point in time. So be on good behavior. Don't do anything towards them. Don't say anything about it. No need to call and leave nasty grams. None of that. We enjoyed our time there for the most part. We both accommodated each other, and this is just where it is right now. But continue to send us ideas. You can shoot them to me.
Every single one of these ideas that is shot to us it's not overlooked. You know what I mean? Whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or a direct message or an email, we're not ruling anything out. But for the most part, I will say. And even these venues that aren't in Cleveland, we're still keeping those, in the database of things to contact in the future. But for the time being, we are looking primarily in the greater Cleveland area for a venue. And another thing is the east side of Cleveland is there's maybe some things, but then are people willing to travel? I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
Somebody from the outside may just look at Cleveland as Cleveland, but west side and east side of Cleveland is two kind of totally different worlds. And it's a longer drive for some people, and there's so many factors. Like, it's literally driving me nuts on doing the pros and cons of these places that may not even say yes to begin with. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to figure it out before I even contact them, and then, like I said, I would say I've no joke, I've probably sent out 300 plus emails in the last month, and I've gotten maybe 10 replies. Because some people just don't want it. They and
going right to the trash.
Yeah. They just say nope. This isn't what we want here. Because there are preconceived notions about pro wrestling, and they don't want it. And like I said, there's been all these wrestling groups throughout Cleveland, and I'm sure this applies to every area in America that has independent wrestling, but there have been these places that have gone in, done one show, ripped them off, not paid, went in, broke stuff, destroyed buildings, whatever, and that they just it's like, do not rent to pro wrestling forever now. So we're experiencing like, I would say out of the 10 replies that I got, is probably 7 that said, no, we've done this in the past and we don't want it.
They replied just to say no.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you for that, folks. And so how can you help as an AIW fan? That's a question that we've gotten plenty of times. Outside of shooting us those ideas, once again, for different venues, there are other things, of course, that you can do because maybe we land on a venue, maybe it is going to cost a bit more. We're not going to be the organization that creates a Kickstarter or anything like that, but you can buy merchandise online. You can buy the DVDs and MP4s from Smart Mark Video, buy those up. You can pack the house on November 23rd, more than we've ever had, to increase everything there.
Because honestly, what makes this more stressful is we have a lot of things tied up in the WrestleMania weekend as far as finances and everything. We have to have that set aside, so it's like we only have so much of a little bit of money to work with right now. So if we could pack it on Friday and help kind of build that capital up and, sell some DVDs and sell whatever t-shirts we have or whatever we need, we need as many resources as possible right now. And like I said, I'm hoping by the time this comes out, this is all old news. And, and over the next few days, we have secured something and set something and announced something. And maybe this is all, just people are listening to me in the moment right now. But, as of right now, there is nothing officially set at all.
And the other thing that you guys can do too, that supports us indirectly but directly, support all of our sponsors as much as possible. Just go and buy the shit out of everything, or spend as much money at the places we talk about. We do the after party at the Fun House. Heck, let's pack 200 people in the Fun House this Friday if we can afterwards, because part of what this all comes back to is, for whatever reason, there is a stigma in working with pro wrestling. And if we can try to change that stigma even just a little bit, and we've got these sponsors and people who work with us as partners, as references, to say, yeah, you guys should work with at least this wrestling organization, then that becomes a new revenue stream for us and helps us look better with these other places.
And that is another thing that is an issue, is all of these relationships are kind of in jeopardy as well based on losing Mount Carmel. It's like, so what if we move somewhere so far out of Lakewood, then the Funhouse is now, that relationship is not going to work anymore. Or we go somewhere and we can't sell our own concessions, so then the Angelo's Pizza is out. So there's so much more at jeopardy than just the venue. There's our relationships that we've built up. We just started this dangling our feet in the water with brew nuts, you know what I mean? And now that's probably out, you know what I mean? Because we're not going to find anything relatively close to that place again.
Yeah.
So this is affecting so much more than just the show. It's these business relationships we've built up over the years in this location, in the local community. That's all in jeopardy too. So, and that affects the Funhouse, because the Funhouse does rely on our business a lot. And, and Angelo's not so much relies on us, but, it does affect that, their business. And it affects our, our business too. So I've been under an extreme amount of stress for a month straight.
So, as we said, go out and support us, obviously, and support these sponsors. Do everything. You have a voice. I know this sounds like elections now, but you have a voice. Feel free to use it when you're going to these places, or you're
just don't use it to Mount Carmel.
Don't use it at Mount Carmel. But when you're going into these places that we talk about that are our sponsors, or you're purchasing something that's our sponsor, heck, post about it on social media and say that you found out about it because of AIW, and help us have a good name, I guess, within the community, because that's always been our goal when we have all of these partnerships, is to work within the Cleveland community, really. So the more that you guys can do in showing the positive message and influence that we do have on these businesses and these partnerships, that goes a long way and helps us as well.
Yeah, and I mean, just right now we just kind of need all the help that we can get to make this, to make it through this weird transitional period, because there's a lot where it's like looking into the unknown right now, because and I am like OCD, like need to have things set in advance, and this is why everything I feel falls apart for AIW so much, because I do get so organized and I do book things so far in advance, and I do try to dot all my I's and cross all my T's. And then it usually all comes crashing down with cancellations and stuff. But this is additionally freaking me out, because I have no fucking plan right now. It's like 11:23 for sure, 12:28 we have no idea, and Jersey City, and that is like the only three things that are happening. And 12:28 is locationless right now, so it's driving me nuts, because you do have. I do have an obligation to provide these shows, because, if you have to keep the momentum of the success going as well, because if we disappear for 6 months, how hard is it going to be to get everybody back again? You know?
Absolutely. So hopefully when we talk to you guys next, we'll have an answer. We'll know more of what's going on.
I hope that we have an answer before this comes out. I swear to God. I hope that this have already been answered on Twitter somewhere, and there's an announcement and a flyer. And
this is hopefully like the Sid episode where we got really stressed out, but then everything ended up okay.
Yeah, I hope so, because right now it's not been okay for a month.
So do all those things we said, and we'll see you guys on Friday. and let's pack the place, and then let's pack the place at the Funhouse afterwards. And then we'll talk to you next week here on The Card is Going to Change. For John Thorne, my name's Steve Guy. Talk to you next week.